Keanu Reeves walked slowly across the studio lot, his black boots brushing gently against the gravel. The morning was quiet, the sky overcast, and the air felt like it was holding its breath. He had arrived early, as he always did out of respect. For everyone's time, that was who he was. Never late, never loud, always grounded. He held a folded script in his hand. The edges were slightly bent from the night before. He had read it twice already, and the third time, he stopped on a page and simply stared. Something didn't feel right, not for him, not for her, not for the kind of story he believed in telling. Inside Stage 3. The set was being built for the big confrontation scene between his character and Anna's. Lights were being adjusted. The camera crew discussed angles and assistants whispered into walkie-talkies. Everything was moving forward, except Keanu. He paused at the door, watching the space come alive. It looked beautiful, almost too real. It was designed to look like an old cafe in Havana, soft yellow walls, lace curtains on the windows, and wooden chairs that looked like they had stories of their own. But the words written for him, those didn't belong. Ana de Armas was already inside. Sitting quietly in a corner, looking down at her own copy of the script. She wore a soft green dress, her hair tied loosely, her face calm but distant. Didn't notice him walk in. Maybe she did, but chose not to look up. The two of them had done many scenes together before, but this one felt different. It had too much weight, too much silence underneath the surface. Keanu walked over to the director, man in his early 40s, energetic and confident, with a headset around his neck. The director smiled when he saw Keanu. "You ready?" It asked. Keanu gave a small nod. "Can I talk to you for a second? Alone?" The director looked confused but motioned toward a quiet corner of the set. They walked away from the crew, and Keanu unfolded the script in his hand, turning to a specific page. He pointed at a line his character was supposed to say to Anna's character. It was cruel, not just harsh cruel in a personal way, something no human being should say to another. It was meant to trigger an emotional breakdown in her character. To push the story forward. "I can't say this," Keanu said softly. The director raised an eyebrow. "Why not? It's the emotional climax." Keanu looked away for a moment, then back. "Because I wouldn't say that to her. And I don't believe my character would either. Not like this. It's not with those words." The director sighed. "Keanu, this is acting, it's just a role." But Keanu shook his head gently. "I know, and I've said a lot of things on camera. But this line, it's too personal. It sounds like it's meant to break her, not the character. It's written in a way that hits somewhere too real. And Anna, she's not just acting through this. I can feel that." It was a long pause. The director looked at Keanu, confused, then slowly glanced across the room to Anna, who still hadn't moved from her spot. "Did something happen?" he asked. Keanu didn't answer directly. He just said, "If you trust me, let's change it. Let me say something that respects the pain, without adding more to it." The director hesitated, but finally nodded. "All right, but keep the emotion strong. The scene still needs to hit." Keanu nodded. It just won't hit the wrong way." He walked slowly back toward Anna. She finally looked up. Her eyes were tired, but she tried to smile. "Morning," she said softly. Keanu sat beside her. "Morning." They sat in silence for a few seconds. The kind that isn't awkward, just honest. Then he said gently, "I asked them to change the line." Anna blinked. "Which line?"
The one where I was supposed to say something about your past.
"Something cruel." She stared at him, then slowly looked down at the script. Her fingers traced the page. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded. "I didn't feel right saying it. Not to you." She nodded, then turned her face away slightly. "It's strange," she said after a while. "It's like that line reminded me of something someone once told me. It took me years to forget it, and suddenly it was here. Printed on a page, like the past coming back to haunt me." Keanu didn't ask for details. He never pushed. He simply said, "You don't have to relive pain to make others feel something. Your truth is enough." Anna looked at him. Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't cry, just held the script tighter. The scene they shot later that day was different than what had been written. Keanu's words were softer, but they still carried truth. He confronted her character with concern instead of cruelty. Anna's reaction was raw, vulnerable, and heartbreakingly real. The director watched from behind the monitor and nodded slowly, moved in a way he hadn't expected, after the scene wrapped. The crew clapped in out of obligation, but because they had felt something deeper than just a scripted moment. Keanu stepped aside while Anna stayed seated on the cafe chair. She was still inside her character, or maybe inside her own memory. When she finally stood, she walked to him and said, "You saw me?" He gave a gentle smile. "I just listened." The rest of the day passed like a quiet dream. Everyone worked, but something in the air had shifted. Respect had taken the place of pressure. Trust had replaced fear. And one simple act of kindness had changed the story, not just on the page. But in real life, as the sun began to set and most of the crew had packed up, Keanu stayed behind, sitting on one of the empty chairs, thinking. He didn't see himself as a hero, never did. But he believed in something, not just making movies, but making moments that didn't harm the soul to create. He looked at the revised script in his hand. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. He smiled faintly, then stood and walked out of the set. The sky outside was turning gold, and somewhere behind him, Anna sat alone for a few minutes longer, breathing a little easier. The next morning on set felt different. The light came in softer. People moved slower. There was a kind of silence between everyone, not the awkward kind, but a thoughtful one. No one said it out loud, but they all remembered what happened yesterday. They saw how Keanu changed the scene, how Anna gave something real, and how the camera captured something that wasn't in the script, but felt more honest than anything written. Anna came in just before the call time. Her shoulders were relaxed, her face calm. She wore a loose gray hoodie and held her coffee in both hands. Keanu noticed her the second she stepped into the studio. He didn't wave, he just nodded, and she nodded back. They didn't need words, but words were coming. Today's scene was supposed to be the after moment. Their characters had shared something intense. Now they had to pretend to move on, like most people do in life. Script had them sit at a park bench, talk about the weather, the future, and all the little things people use to hide what they're really feeling. Keanu sat on the edge of the fake park bench, flipping through the script again. The words weren't cruel like before, but they felt empty. Small talk. Surface-level. He looked over at Anna, who was quietly reading her own copy. He could see the same doubt in her eyes. "Do you believe this scene?" he asked. Anna looked up. "Not really. Me neither." The director, seeing them whispering, walked over. "What's up?" he asked. Keanu held up the script. "We don't feel this scene. Feels like it's pretending everything is fine. But real people don't work that way. Not after what they just went through." Anna nodded. "Sometimes silence says more." Director scratched his head. "You want to cut the dialogue?" Keanu looked at Anna. She gave a small smile. "Not all of it," Keanu said. "Just the parts that aren't real." The director thought for a moment. "Fine, but we still need movement. The scene can't just be nothing." "It won't be nothing," Keanu said. "It'll be quieter, slower, but it'll say something without yelling." Day started the scene with almost no lines, just Keanu and Anna sitting on a park bench. Anna's character looked up at the fake sky, blinking as if the light bothered her eyes. She turned slowly to Keanu, searching his face. But not asking questions, Keanu single quotes, his character just sat still, his hands folded in his lap. Looking ahead after a long pause, Anna finally said one sentence. "I'm still learning how to feel safe again." It wasn't in the script, but no one yelled cut. Keanu turned to her, waited a moment, then said softly, "Take your time." That was it. Those words were enough. The camera stayed rolling for a full minute after, just their faces, their silence, their breath. When the director finally whispered cut, the crew didn't move right away. Something had passed through the room. Like a soft wave, Anna stood up slowly, her eyes shining again, not because she was acting, because something inside her had moved. Keanu stood next to her, not saying anything. Just standing there. The director walked over. this time slower, more thoughtful. "I think we're building something special here," he said. Keanu nodded. "Something honest." But outside the studio, not everyone was happy. A producer, a sharp-talking man with a tight jaw and a suit to clean for a film set, pulled the director aside. "This isn't the script we signed off on," he said in a low voice. "These actors are rewriting scenes. Do you know how dangerous that is? Is it a business?" "They're not rewriting," the director replied quietly. "They're living it, and it's working." The producer narrowed his eyes. "Just keep it under control. We don't want drama behind the scenes." He walked away. But someone else had heard the conversation, a young assistant. Her name was Leela. She had been working on the set for just 2 months. Quiet, always polite, always invisible to most. But she saw things. And she cared deeply about the actors, especially Anna. That afternoon, Leela found a quiet moment and walked over to Anna. She held a small envelope in her hand. "This came for you," she said, handing it over. Anna took it and looked confused. "From who?" "I don't know. Someone dropped it off at the gate. No name." Anna opened the envelope. Inside was a small photo, a very old one. It was a picture of her years ago, before she was known. Back when she still lived in Cuba, she was sitting outside a school, smiling at something off camera. On the back, in black ink, were 5 words: "You haven't escaped your past." Anna froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Leila noticed the change. "Is everything okay?" Anna quickly closed the envelope. "Yeah, it's nothing." But it wasn't nothing. Keanu found her a few hours later in the makeup room, sitting on the floor with her knees pulled to her chest. Her eyes were dry, but her body looked like it had forgotten how to breathe. He sat beside her, not asking questions. "Just waiting." Finally, Anna whispered, "Someone is trying to pull me back. I left everything behind. I changed my life. But someone remembers." Keanu stayed quiet, then said, "No one owns your story but you." Anna didn't answer. She just leaned her head on his shoulder. Outside the makeup room, the sun was setting again. Shadows stretched across the lot, long and soft. And inside, 2 people sat side by side, not as actors, but as human beings, trying to hold on to truth in a world full of fiction. What they didn't know was that someone had taken a picture of them through the half-closed door, and that picture would soon find its way onto the internet. The story was just beginning. The next morning, Anna's phone wouldn't stop buzzing, message after message, notifications popping up like tiny alarms. She sat on the edge of her hotel bed, hair still wet from the shower, staring at the screen. Someone had leaked a photo of her and Keanu, the one from the night before. They were sitting side by side on the makeup room floor, her head resting gently against his shoulder. It was a quiet moment, peaceful, private now. It was all over the internet, the headline read. Something more than acting? Keanu and Anna's quiet moment behind the scenes sparks rumors. Anna stared at it, not angry, not embarrassed, just tired. She felt like someone had stolen a piece of her again. Not because of what the photo showed, but because it was a real moment. And now it belonged to strangers online. Keanu called her a few minutes later. "You saw it?" he asked gently. "Yes," she whispered. "You okay?" Anna didn't answer right away. Then she said, "I don't want people to twist something that was kind." Keanu was silent for a second. Then he said, "They will. But you and I, we know what it was. And that's what matters. Does it ever stop?" She asked. "The noise, the guessing, the stories that aren't real." "No," he said quietly. "But you can stop letting it define you." Anna closed her eyes. "You always say things that make it sound simple, because the truth usually is." They both laughed just a little. Then Keanu added, "You want to meet before today's?" "Shoot, walk it off." "Yeah," she said. "I'd like that." They met in a small park 2 blocks from the studio. It was still early. The city hadn't fully woken up yet. Air smelled like grass and something sweet from a nearby bakery. They walked slowly, not saying much, just letting the silence settle between them. What was it like for you, Anna asked suddenly, when you first became known? Keanu looked ahead. Hard. Quiet people like me don't do well with loud attention. It makes you feel like you have to explain everything you do, even the things that aren't meant to be explained. Anna nodded. So how did you handle it? Didn't, he said. I just started protecting the parts of me that mattered most, like peace, kindness, honesty, and people who never made me feel like I had to perform off camera. Anna glanced at him. You think I'm performing? No, Keanu said with a gentle smile. I think you're surviving. Back on set, something had changed. The energy felt strange, not tense, but uncertain. The photo had reached the producers. 2 whispers were spreading. Studio wanted to make sure the film stayed professional. Didn't say it directly, but the message was clear. Keep distance. Follow the script. No more rewrites. No more quiet moments caught on camera, Keanu. Felt it in the air? Anna felt it in the eyes around her, but neither of them said anything. Not yet. Today's scene was supposed to be heavy again. Showed their characters dealing with distance, misunderstanding, things left unsaid. Ironic, Anna thought, how art was now mirroring life as the cameras rolled. Keanu looked across the table at her. They were sitting in a dimly lit room, supposed to act like they hadn't seen each other in years. But when he looked at her, he didn't see a character. He saw her, tired, strong, and still carrying something unspoken, Anna said. Her lines, they were written to sound cold, detached, but her eyes gave away the truth. And Keanu, instead of sticking to the script, changed one line again. He looked at her and said softly, I know it's easier to disappear than to explain why you're hurting. But you don't have to disappear from me. Anna froze for a second. Then, something inside her cracked open. Her reply came from somewhere real. I'm not disappearing. I'm just scared that if I show all of me, someone will take it and turn it into something ugly. No one cut the scene. No one said a word. Because everyone watching knew they weren't acting anymore. After the scene ended, the room stayed still for a few seconds longer than usual. Even the sound guy forgot to switch off the boom mic. The director walked over, slower this time. You keep doing this, he said softly to Keanu. Going off script, Keanu looked at him. Only when the real story is better than the one we wrote. The director didn't argue. He just sighed. They're going to call us the producers. Maybe the studio heads. Let them, Keanu. Said he walked off. Anna followed him out to the hallway. You didn't have to do that, she said. I didn't do it for you, he replied, then smiled. I did it for the truth, she smiled back. But later that day, the call came. The producer from before, the one with the perfect suit and cold eyes, arrived on set. This time he wasn't quiet. He walked straight to Keanu and said in front of everyone, you're paid to act, not to rewrite. We don't need your poetry. We need a finished film. Keanu didn't raise his voice. He just looked the man in the eye and said, then maybe you hired the wrong person. The room went silent. The producer narrowed his eyes. You walk off the set and we'll find someone else. Keanu took a breath. Anna stepped forward. Then you'll need to replace both of us. Gasps echoed through the crew. The producer looked at them both. You think the world needs your version of this story? You think kindness sells tickets? Keanu said nothing. Anna said nothing. But Lila, the young assistant who had been quiet for weeks, suddenly stepped forward and said, yes, I do. Everyone turned to look at her. I've worked on sets where actors scream and directors curse and everything's fake. This is the first time I've seen something real. It changed how I look at people, at myself. So yeah, kindness matters. The room fell into silence again. The producer didn't reply, simply turned and walked out. Keanu looked at Lila. His eyes softened. Thank you. Layla smiled, nervous but proud. You saw her when no one else did. I just followed your lead. The day ended quietly. Anna went home that night and sat alone on her balcony. The wind brushed her hair gently. She held the old photo in her hand, the one from the envelope. She flipped it over again. You haven't escaped your past. She stared at the words, then picked up a pen and added something under it. I'm not escaping. I'm healing. The story wasn't over, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like she was the one writing it. Anna arrived early the next morning, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. The set was quiet. Lights were still warming up. Wires lay across the floor like sleepy snakes, and the chairs weren't placed yet. It was that in-between time when the world hadn't started moving but was just about to. Anna liked that time. It made her feel safe. She stood alone near the fake cafe window, holding a cup of tea. The same spot where her character had cried 2 days ago. Only now, she didn't feel like she was acting anymore. The lines between her and the role had faded. "You're early," a familiar voice said behind her. She turned and smiled. "So are you." Keanu walked over, holding a script that had been folded too many times. He looked tired, but calm. "I couldn't sleep," he said. "Me neither." They both stood there for a moment, looking at nothing in particular. "I made a decision last night," Keanu said quietly. Anna looked at him. "What kind?" "If they ask me to walk away from this film, I will." "It." Anna blinked. "You'd leave? After everything?" "If staying means pretending, then yes." She didn't respond right away. Then she nodded slowly. "Me too." The conversation hung in the air like soft rain. The director arrived a few minutes later. His eyes were wide. Something had changed. He waved Keanu and Anna into the hallway, away from the crew. "Okay," he said, breathless. "You're not going to believe this, but something's happened." "What?" Keanu asked. "The studio saw the new scenes you shot. They're not mad. In fact, they love it." Anna frowned. "What?" The director nodded. "They're calling it raw and intimate. Apparently someone high up watched it with their teenage daughter and she cried. Said it felt more real than anything she's seen in years." Keanu raised an eyebrow. "So, now they approve?" "Not just approve." The director grinned. "They want more scenes like that. Honest ones. Real ones." They said, and I quote, "Let them speak their truth. It's working." Anna's eyes widened. Keanu smiled faintly. Quickly things change. But just as things were looking up, something else happened. A reporter showed up at the gate. Not a film journalist, not someone from Hollywood press. This one was different. He worked for a website that focused on personal scandals, rumors, secrets, and he wasn't there for the movie. He was there for Anna Layla. The assistant ran to warn them. "He's asking questions about your past," she whispered to Anna. "He says he knows things. He mentioned your old school. Your father." Anna felt the blood leave her face. Keanu saw the change in her instantly. "What is it?" Anna shook. Her head, nothing. But Keanu knew. It's not nothing. Anna stepped away, breathing faster now. Her hands trembled slightly. "I thought I left it behind," she said under her breath. "I thought it was over." Keanu gently touched her arm. "You don't have to face it alone." Anna looked at him, her eyes wet. "If he finds out, if he prints it, people will look at me differently. They'll stop seeing who I am now. They'll only see who I was back then." "Let them look," Keanu said. "The people who really care, they'll keep seeing. You." But Anna wasn't ready. She walked off the set, didn't even tell the director, just left. Keanu didn't follow right away. He knew sometimes people needed space. But later that evening, when she still hadn't returned, he went to her hotel. She didn't answer the door at first, but after 5 knocks, she finally opened it. She wore an oversized sweater and no makeup. Her eyes were red. Keanu didn't say anything. He just stood there with a brown paper bag. "I brought food," he said softly. "In silence, if that's what you need." Anna stepped aside, let him in. They sat on the floor. Again, no cameras this time, no scripts, no lights, just 2 people. Anna took a deep breath, then said, "My father used to drink, and when he did, he'd say things, terrible things, to my mother, to me, one night. He didn't just say them, he acted on them. After that, I left. I never looked back." Keanu listened, still and silent. Anna continued, voice shaking. He disappeared years ago. I never told anyone in Hollywood. I built a new story. One with clean lines. One where nothing bad had ever happened. Keanu nodded slowly. But pain doesn't vanish. It waits. Keanu looked at him. I'm scared the world will stop respecting me if they know. Keanu shook his head. They'll respect you more, 'cause you didn't let it define you. They sat quietly after that. Anna eventually whispered, Thank you. You don't owe me thanks. No, she said, smiling softly. But I feel it anyway. Later that night, Keanu got a message from the director. A new scene was added to the script, not written by the writers, but by Anna. She had sent it. Herself, it was raw. It was about a woman confronting her past, not as a victim, but as someone who survived and chose to speak. And at the bottom of the page, she had written, Let this be the truth we give the world. Keanu read it twice, then wrote back, I'll be there. Every word. The next morning, when Anna stepped on set again, something had changed in her eyes. She didn't look like someone running anymore. She looked like someone ready to stand, and as Keanu watched her from across the room, he realized kindness wasn't always soft. Sometimes it was the strongest thing in the world. They filmed the new scene on a quiet Tuesday morning. No extra lights, no crowd on set. It's just one camera, one long take, and two people sitting at a kitchen table. Anna's character was supposed to confess. Not cry, not fall apart, just speak. And Keanu's character was there to listen. No saving, no advice, just presence before the director called action. Anna closed her eyes for a moment. Keanu noticed. He leaned closer and whispered, You don't have to be brave, just be honest. Anna opened her eyes and gave a small nod. Then the director raised his hand, and the scene began. Anna sat in silence for the first few seconds. Then, with a steady voice, she began, There were things in my past. She said, eyes focused ahead, that made me feel like love had to be earned. Like safety was something you had to buy or beg for. And when someone finally offered me kindness, I didn't trust it, because I never learned how. Keanu didn't move, but I'm tired, she continued. Tired of pretending I was always strong. Tired of hiding the parts of me that still shake when a door slams too loud. She looked at Keanu. I just want to stop running. He looked at her deeply, then said softly, Then stop. Anna's eyes filled, but no tears fell. She smiled through it, and the camera kept rolling. The director didn't yell cut. He just let the moment breathe. When the scene ended, the crew didn't clap. They stood still, silent. Holding their breath, the director wiped a tear from his cheek and whispered, That's the one. Anna stepped off the set and sat quietly in the corner, her hands slightly shaking. Keanu walked over, knelt down beside her, placed her script back into her hands. You gave them your truth, he said, and they listened. She nodded. Unable to speak for a moment, then whispered, I was scared it would break me. But it didn't, he replied. Later that afternoon, the news broke online. A new article had been posted, this time from a well-known magazine. But it wasn't gossip. It was different. The headline read, Ana de Armas opens up through film. The scene that wasn't in the script. The piece didn't try to dig into her past. It praised the power of the moment, how it felt real, how it connected to people who had been silent for too long. It included quotes from viewers who had seen the leaked footage. Strangers writing things like, I saw myself in her voice. This is more than acting. This is healing. Anna read the comments alone in her hotel room that night. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like hiding, but things were never simple. The reporter who had shown up before came back. This time, he sent an email directly to Anna's publicist. He claimed to have file documents from Anna's early years, stories from her home country, a name, a police report, an old photo of her and her father outside a small house. He didn't threaten her. The message was clear. The world deserves to know who she really is. Anna sat with the email in front of her, hands frozen over the keyboard. Keanu came over later that evening. He had been filming pickups for another. Scene, she handed him the laptop and said, "He knows." Keanu read the email, slow, silent, then shut the laptop. "And so what?" he said. Anna looked at him. "You don't understand. If this gets out, the world will paint me as broken. They'll twist it. They'll make me the story." "No." Keanu said, "They'll see your strength, because you never gave up, because you made beauty from it." Anna breathed in deeply. "Should I just tell the truth myself, before he does?" "Only if you're ready," Keanu said. "It's not out of fear, out of freedom." She nodded slowly. The next morning, she made her decision. She wrote a short post. Not a full story. Not every detail. Just enough to claim her voice. "When I was young, I lived through things no child should. My story is not a secret. It's a journey. I've spent my adult life learning how to stand, how to speak, and how to love. I'm not ashamed of where I come from. I'm proud of who I've become." She posted it with a quiet heart within minutes. The internet responded. Actors shared it. Fans supported her. People from around the world, survivors. Teachers, mothers, artists shared their own stories underneath hers. Keanu watched the response. From the studio trailer, he didn't say much, but inside, he felt something shift. This wasn't about acting anymore. This was about Truth, the producer, who had once warned them to follow the script called again, but this time he wasn't. Angry, he simply said, "You've started something. Don't stop now." Anna stood in front of the camera that afternoon. A new scene being filmed. But this time, she didn't need lines. She was the story now, in Keanu. He was right there beside her. Not to guide, not to speak, just to stand, because sometimes the loudest kind of support is silent. The final week of filming arrived. The sun rose over the studio lot with a soft orange glow, and something felt peaceful. It's not because the pressure was going to beat, because the pressure had transformed. It wasn't about making a perfect film anymore. It was about telling a real story, one that mattered. Anna stepped out of her car slowly, her hands in her coat pockets. For the first time in years, she felt light, not weightless, but grounded. Her truth was no longer a secret. And strangely, now that the world knew, she didn't feel smaller. She felt stronger. Keanu was already there, sipping tea from a small, white mug. He saw her coming and nodded with a smile that said everything was okay. She smiled back. "Last day," he said softly. "Last page," she replied. They walked together toward the set. Inside, the crew moved like they were part of something sacred. Lights were adjusted with extra care. Props placed with quiet hands. No one shouted, no one rushed. The director stood near the camera, looking calm and proud. Today's scene was the final one. No explosions, no big twist. Just two characters meeting. Again, after time apart. Sitting on a bench, it's the same bench they'd used weeks before. The same bench where silence had spoken louder than dialogue. But this time, silence had changed. The director gave them space before the camera rolled. Anna sat first. Keanu followed. Their characters were supposed to sit in stillness and speak, but neither of them reached for the script. Anna looked at Keanu and said, "How do we know when we've healed?" Keanu thought for a second, then answered, "Maybe when the pain becomes a memory, not a home." Anna blinked slowly, then looked away into the distance. "I was scared for so long," she said. "Scared that if people knew, they wouldn't want to work with me, or trust me, or even look at me the same." Keanu replied, "Then you gave the world a gift, because now they see the real you. And it's more powerful than the version you were hiding." Anna smiled, tears in her eyes. "Thank you." "For what?" "For saying no to that line," she whispered. They sat in silence after that. The camera stayed rolling, capturing not just acting, but presence, honesty. After the scene, the director stepped forward. "Cut," he said softly. Then louder. "That's a wrap." Heard no one clapped. Not yet. Instead, there was a moment of stillness. And then, one by one, The crew began to applaud. Slowly, gently, but with meaning, not for the movie, but for the journey. Anna stood. Keanu hugged her quietly. It wasn't dramatic, just human. Later that evening, a small wrap party was held. Nothing fancy, just food, music, and the people who made it all happen. Anna gave a short speech. Her hands shook at first, but her voice didn't. This film changed me, she said. Not because it was big, not because it will make millions, but because it reminded me that kindness is not weakness, and truth is not shameful. Thank you all for giving me a space where I could be both an actress and a person. Keanu didn't give a speech. He never liked attention. But when someone asked him how he felt about the movie, he simply said, "We didn't make a film. We made a mirror, and maybe people will see a little of themselves in it." The days passed, the film was edited, the trailer released. People expected something ordinary, but they saw was something raw, soft, brave, and when it finally premiered, people didn't just watch it, they felt it. Critics wrote words like soulful, intimate, and necessary. Audiences cried not from sadness, but from recognition. They saw a woman reclaim her story, and they saw a man who stood beside her, not to save her, but to honor her truth. Interviews followed. Anna was asked why the story felt so real. She looked at the reporter and said, "Because it is. Every frame holds a piece of truth. It's not just mine, but of anyone who's ever felt silenced, judged, or afraid to speak." Keanu was asked why he refused that original line. He smiled gently and said, "Because words matter, and silence matters. More when it holds respect." A few weeks later, Anna received a letter. No return address, just a handwritten note. "You stood in your truth, and in doing so, you gave others permission to do the same. Thank you." Anna folded the letter, tears falling quietly. She never found out who sent it, but she didn't need to, because she already knew. The story was never just about the film. It was about healing, about reclaiming voice, about kindness. Not as softness, but as strength. And in the quiet pages between the scripts and the scenes, two people wrote something that could never be erased: truth.